Did you know the 7 princes of hell? Each govern a different deadly sin, shaping thoughts, habits, and culture in ways most people never notice. In this episode, we'll connect lived gnosis to demonology and map each ruler to their vice, Lucifer to pride, Mammon to greed, Asmodeus to lust, Leviathan to envy, Satan to wrath, Belphegor to sloth, and Beelzebub to gluttony. From scripture and Tobit to Milton and later. Tradition will separate what's biblical from what was built by centuries of imagination and show how these archetypes mirror real inner battles. You'll learn how to spot their subtle influence in everyday life and how to transmute it, turning pride into humility, hunger into purpose, desire into discipline, envy into holy longing, wrath into purification, rest into renewal, and appetite into balance. This isn't just lore. It's a practical roadmap for spiritual growth. Watch to the end for the big reveal on how these forces converge, and drop 777 in the comments if you're ready to face your shadow. Like and subscribe to Bible Stream so you never miss the next chapter. The 7 princes of hell. Demonology explained. Before we descend, we need a compass that can tell symbol from spirit and rumor from truth. The ancients called it a knowing that is lived rather than memorized. That compass is gnosis. Gnosis is far more than ordinary knowledge. It is an intimate, transforming kind of understanding that reaches beyond the visible world and touches what many call the unseen. The idea comes from ancient spiritual traditions, and in simple terms refers to a profound inner revelation, a direct personal encounter with the divine, or the ultimate truth. This is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God. John 17:3. And that line captures the center of it, not facts on a page, but knowing as contact. Such knowing cannot be picked up from classrooms' manuals or the clever speech of teachers. It rises from within through intense spiritual experience, long meditation, or even a moment of crisis that strips a person of their usual certainties. Have you ever felt a quiet insight arrive like a key in a lock opening? Something you did not know had a door. Scripture hints at this inner tutoring. Ye need not that any man teach you. 1 John 2:27, which many take to mean that true instruction can be given directly to the heart. In this understanding, Gnostics hold that authentic gnosis lets a person notice the hidden scaffolding of the universe, see through the glamour of the material order, and recognize deeper spiritual patterns that govern existence. We look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. 2 Corinthians 4:18. Does that not sound like someone learning to read the world from the inside out? Imagine you stand at a window between 2 rooms on one side, the ordinary days with their lists and errands. On the other, a silence that feels alive. If that window opened for you, would you step through? Many report that gnosis begins exactly there, as the layers of daily habit are peeled back and the person glimpses what was always present but covered. Some argue this unveiling is the fruit of discipline. Others suggest it arrives as a pure gift, but in either case, the effect is the same. The illusions thin the center holds. The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. 1 Corinthians 2:14. A reminder that this is not about sharper eyesight, so much as a changed way of seeing. What if a night of fear became the very hour your sight was healed? Would you cling to the old explanations or follow the new light even when it leads beyond mapped roads. Those who speak of gnosis say it is the key that turns the lock on the riddles of life and death and what may come after. In plain terms, it is a steady uncovering, a patient lifting of veils until understanding rises into something like enlightenment that surpasses ordinary grasp. The eyes of your understanding being enlightened. Ephesians 1:18 is how another text puts it, and that phrase serves as a modest conclusion. True knowledge here is not a storage of data, but a change of sight, ordered to realities that everyday noise usually drowns out. Turning now to the 7 princes of hell, we are not speaking of campfire monsters or costume villains, but of potent rulers within an infernal order, each bound to a ruling vice. Yet they are more than emblems of evil, because each one mirrors something basic about the human creature. Over time, they became closely tied to the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. However, the connection is not a straightforward lesson in right and wrong, but rather points to deeper spiritual battles that every seeker must face on the road to understanding. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Ephesians 6:12. Does that not name the arena where these powers press in? If you looked into your own heart tonight, which voice would you hear first, and how would you answer it? Pride is not only arrogance, it is the pull to rise above others until you are cut off from the divine, and the whole pride goeth before destruction. Proverbs 16:18. And if applause found you, would you notice the thin line where confidence hardens? Envy is more than jealousy. It signals a restless ache about one's place, a hollow in the spirit. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. James 3:16. So imagine you are passed over, another is praised. Would you let that emptiness drive you or turn it into prayer? Wrath goes beyond anger. It is passion unruled that breaks things inside. For the wrath of man worketh, not the righteousness of God. James 1:20. And if a slight burned in you at midnight, would you feed it or set it down? In this frame, each sin the princes carry is a dark reflection of human nature. They can divert a soul from growth and gnosis, but at the same time, they mark the very gates that must be met and crossed. Some say the meeting comes as discipline. Others say it arrives in crisis, yet the work is the same to understand and master what would otherwise master you. What if slowness of spirit sloth kept you from the next step? Would you rise when called Siaf? Proverbs 6:9-10. What if greed whispered that more will finally fill the void? The love of money is the root of all evil. Timothy 6:10. Would you notice how the grasp tightens the heart? What if gluttony promised comfort without cost? Cf. Proverbs 23:20-21. Or lust blurred persons into objects. Whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Matthew 5:28. Would you choose another gaze? Picture yourself as a traveler seeking sight. The road to true gnosis runs straight through these shadowed regions, asking you to face and integrate what you would rather hide. Keep thy heart with all diligence. Proverbs 4:23. Lucifer is not presented as just any fallen angel. He is the most powerful and the most feared among demons, and the story gives a clear reason why. Once called the light bearer, he was the brightest and most splendid of all the angels standing nearest to God. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Isaiah 14:12 captures both his title and his fall in one line. That high status is what makes his rebellion so weighty. Unlike other demons who were made lower or slipped from grace in smaller ways, Lucifer had been a being of light who chose the shadow. By pride I will ascend. I will be like the Most High. Isaiah 14:13-14. What sets him apart and what marks his greater power is exactly this origin and this mind. He did not drift into evil. He decided to challenge the highest authority. It was not a petty refusal. It was a cosmic revolt that shook the order of heaven. Imagine you had once stood closest to the throne, felt the blaze of holiness on your face, and pride whispers that you deserve the seat itself. What do? After the fall, he did not vanish into silence. In this account, he becomes ruler of hell, a leader among demons, by unmatched force and by cunning that others cannot match. I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Luke 10:18 says, "The fall was sudden and public, but the story insists the mind that fell remained sharp." His thirst for forbidden knowledge also marks him off from the rest. While many demons are said to spread chaos or bait people with base desire, Lucifer's method is more dangerous because it works at the level of truth and light. Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. If a voice came to you dressed in brightness and logic, would you notice where the light bends? He seeks to twist what is true to turn illumination into a blade and to corrupt by small, clever degrees rather than crude force. Picture yourself faced with a choice that looks noble but aims to unseat humility. Would you catch the turn in time, or would you sign your consent and only later feel the ground give way? In the infernal order, Lucifer stands at the top because he stands for the ultimate sin, pride. His fall from the highest height gives him a strange authority in the abyss and makes him the most dangerous adversary against the divine. He is a liar and the father of it. John 8:44 fits the way this story frames his work with words and knowing. So Lucifer is not treated as just another demon. He is the embodiment of rebellion, a living sign of what happens when pride displaces humility and knowledge is chased without wisdom. And that in this telling is why he remains the most powerful and the most feared presence in the infernal realm. Mammon is not only a sign for greed. He is described as a formidable ruler in the infernal order, commanding 6,600 legions of demons, and every legion moves with the same restless hunger. He embodies an unending chase after wealth, power, and material gain that never says enough. That number and that army are used to show how wide and stubborn this drive can be able to bend even strong wills and set good intentions off course. If you stood in front of a vault that opened at your word, would you feel full at last, or would the want grow louder? The picture is old in common speech. Mammon came to mean worldly wealth itself, and teachers kept warning that money, when loved, can rule a person more than a person rules money. Ye cannot serve God, and Mammon. Matthew 6:24. In the Middle Ages, theologians and moral writers spoke of Mammon as the face of materialism and avarice, a force that turns people from deeper meaning and from true rest for the soul. A man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. Luke 12:15. Imagine you are praised for success and offered more if you will look the other way. Just once, what would you choose? In that quiet moment, when no one else would know, a well-known warning comes from the 16th century mystic Saint Teresa of Avila. She wrote plainly about the danger of wealth and how even the devout can be led off the path. In her pages, Mammon is a lurking pressure behind the urge to hoard and to count, a presence that can creep even into the church, bending leaders toward influence and comfort instead of their true call. Picture yourself as a pastor or a steward. A gift arrives with strings, a promise of expansion if you will soften a hard word. Do you take it, or do you let it pass? He that trusteth in his riches shall fall. Proverbs 11:28 is the old line that many have used to answer that test. In art and in stories, Mammon is often drawn as a swollen, heavy figure crushed under heaps of gold and gems, the weight of his own hoard making him slow. The 17th century poet John Milton, in Paradise Lost, shows Mammon as a fallen angel who cannot stop staring at the wealth of the earth. Even in hell, he does not mourn the loss of heaven so much as he starts prospecting for value in the dark. Can you picture that scene? Fires still smoldering, yet his eyes are on the glitter in the slag. The point is simple and sharp. The habit goes with him. The greed does not die at the border. The love of money is the root of all evil. Timothy 6:10 is how another text frames this bent, and it fits. The portrait desire turned into a master, not a servant. Taken together, the figure of Mammon works as a strong reminder of what unchecked greed can do. His legions in this telling keep sowing a spirit of materialism, turning people from growth and from insight, and pulling them into cycles of wanting, buying, and being empty again. If you were that traveler looking for light and a voice promised safety, if you would only gain your guide, would you notice how your steps began to circle? Across the ages, Mammon stands as the sign of wealth's power to corrupt and to narrow the heart, showing how quickly more can become a chain for the soul. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth. Matthew 6:19 is a short rule to close with, because it names the choice at the center. Where your treasure is, your heart will follow, and the path you walk will follow your heart. Asmodeus, the demon of lust, is presented as one of the most enigmatic and gripping figures in demonology, and the portraits of him underline why he is often shown with a twisted, fearsome face, and at times 3 heads, one like a bull, one like a ram, and one like a man, set upon a body that is serpentine or even draconic, with powerful wings and clawed feet, as if the form itself announced the primal animal force of the desire he represents. He does not merely dangle physical attraction as bait. He embodies unbridled passion in its full range, the kind that can push a person toward fixation and excess. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh is not of the Father. 1 John 2:16. The line names the territory without softening it, yet lust in this frame is not confined to the body. It stands for intense, often overwhelming urges that can take control through sexual longing, the hunt for pleasure, or the relentless chase after something deeply desired. Have you ever felt that pull grow louder the more you try to feed it? Imagine you step into a dim room where every want is granted. If you only ask, would you leave satisfied, or would the wanting multiply? These impulses, the text insists, can create as well as destroy. At their best, they feed the human drive for connection, love, and even art. At their worst, they coil into addiction, jealousy, and the slow ruin of relationships and lives. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. James 1:14-15. Historically, Asmodeus has been feared and invoked across cultures as the source behind overwhelming desire and jealous rage. In the Hebrew book of Tobit, he is the demon who kills Sarah's 7 husbands on their wedding nights, driven by an obsessive jealousy, cf. Tobit 3:8, 6:14. Jealousy is cruel as the grave, Song of Solomon 8:6 gives ancient language to that story's edge. If you were the one standing at such a threshold, vows spoken, doors closed, would you sense the danger that rides jealousy's back? The name Asmodeus has also been linked to the Persian Ashmadiva, a wrathful spirit of rage and desire, which hints at deep roots running through different traditions and reminds the reader that the figure's power is not a local rumor, but a long memory. At the same time, Asmodeus keeps the double face of lust in view. On one side, he symbolizes the possibility of connection and the fierce creative charge that desire can carry, how it can rouse love, stir artistry, and quicken the will. On the other side, he stands for the hazard of letting those same currents run without banks, where the flood turns to wreckage and chaos. Which side would meet you if you followed your strongest impulse tonight? Can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Proverbs 6:27 presses the question in plain words. In some esoteric streams, Asmodeus is cast not merely as a tempter, but as a test, a force that confronts a person with the truth of his or her deepest desires and demands mastery. Imagine you are that traveler. The road narrows, a wind rises, and what you want most steps into view. Would you be ruled by it, or would you learn to rule it? From this angle, he is less a cartoon of evil and more a necessary pressure in the long work of self-knowledge, a presence that makes you sort indulgence from restraint. The passions he stirs can become ladders toward growth and even insight, but only when a person walks the fine line where wanting is ordered to good rather than to self. Flee fornication. Corinthians 6:18 is blunt counsel, yet beside it stands another path. Walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Galatians 5:16. Taken together, the portrait concludes that Asmodeus is not simply a monster to fear, but a sign of the raw, untamed forces inside the human psyche. He reminds the reader of the sheer power of lust and passion, and of the need to understand and govern those forces, lest they turn a life towards self-destruction. Leviathan, a colossal sea creature that turns up across old stories, stands out most sharply in the Hebrew scriptures as a power from the deep, a beast so vast that poets say it stirs the ocean and dims the sky. Canst thou draw out Leviathan with an hook? Job 41. One asks one line, and another notes the great sea, where there go the ships. There is that Leviathan, Psalm 104:26, often shown as a writhing serpent or a many-headed dragon. This figure gathers into one image the terror of unruled waters and the pull of hidden forces below the surface. In Christian demonology, the same name is tied to envy, not as a cartoon vice, but as an overwhelming current that can swell inside a soul. Envy is the rottenness of the bones. Proverbs 14:30, and the words fit the picture of something that works in secret until the structure gives way. Have you ever felt that comparison creep in, measuring your worth against someone else's, and noticed how quickly the water turns rough? The link between Leviathan and the sea makes sense in that. Light envy churns like a storm, unpredictable and destructive once it breaks, and when it moves, it can darken judgment the way clouds darken day. Yet the older lore gives another depth to the symbol. In esoteric readings, envy is not only a fault, but also the raw form of longing itself, an ache for what lies higher. From that angle, Leviathan can stand for the soul's desperate hunger for transcendence, a restlessness that looks at those nearer to spiritual fullness and aches to cross the gap. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness. Matthew 5:6 points to a way that hunger can be rightly turned. If you felt that ache tonight, would you let it harden into bitterness, or would you bend it into a vow to climb? The challenge the text insists is to steer the force to change envy from a tearing current into a disciplined desire that drives growth, not ruin. Historically, the name also keeps company with chaos and with the first waters in many myths. In the Canaanite stream, Leviathan is akin to Lotan, whom Baal-Hadad defeats a small drama of order, subduing the sea's revolt. A similar chord sounds in a psalm about the Holy One, who breakest the heads of Leviathan in pieces, Psalm 74:14, and in a prophecy that speaks of the day, the Lord will punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea, Isaiah 27:1. Do you hear the parallel? If envy goes unruled, confusion follows. Where envying and strife is, there is confusion, and every evil work, James 3:16. But if it is faced and ordered, an inner calm can replace the churn. Taken as a whole, Leviathan functions as a strong emblem of envy, the deep-seated discontent and comparison that can swell unseen, disturb the heart, and once loosed, wreck more than we expect. At the same time, the same image also points to the soul's longing for something greater, a desire to rise beyond the ordinary and touch a higher state. That double face makes Leviathan a complex sign, a reminder of the chaos envy can bring, and a hint of the transformation possible when the same energy is redirected toward personal and spiritual growth. Satan, the ultimate adversary in Christian thought, is often shown as the very shape of wrath, not a passing flare-up, but a ruthless, destructive anger that drives at the foundations of morality, order, and peace. The portraits are familiar horns, a powerful frame, a face drawn tight with rage, images meant to show a will set on tearing things down. In this telling, the anger is not random. It is planned, patient, and aimed at undoing what holds people together. The thief cometh not but for to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. John 10:10. That short line fits the logic of calculated fury. Think of how such wrath works in the world. It sparks, wars, stirs, violence, splits neighborhoods and nations and leaves a trail of fear. It festers, first hardens into hatred next, and then erupts with force enough to wreck whatever it touches. The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. James 1:20. If you felt that heat rise in your chest tonight and someone whispered, "Give it room," would you open the door or would you shut it before it remade you? Many depictions underline how Satan's anger is terrifying because it is relentless. It is a campaign rather than an outburst, a long push toward ruin. Be ye angry and sin not, neither give place to the devil. Ephesians 4:26-27 works here as a warning. There is a thin moment when anger can still be governed before it becomes a gate. Some streams of esoteric teaching take a more complex view and say this force can act as a necessary fire, clearing out what is old, corrupt, and stuck, like a storm that tears down dead wood so a forest can grow again. Have you walked through a life that needed burning, back a habit, a lie, a structure that trapped you, and wondered whether the blaze that frightened you might also free you? In that light, People have linked this fierce wrath with the night of the soul, the hard passage where a person must face the most violent motions of the inner world to cross through and come out changed. Historically, the tie between Satan and wrath runs with his role as the rebel against divine rule. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, the revolt is born in pride, but carried out with anger, and the rage at being cast from heaven fuels an unending fight against the order of God. And the great dragon was cast out, called the devil in Satan Revelation. 12:9 gives the scriptural backdrop the fall turns grievance into a program. If you stood on that edge, power lost, the center shifted. Would you let bitterness become your map, or would you refuse to be led by it? The picture then is double-edged. On one side, Satan's wrath stands for the raw power of anger to tear down even what is most sacred and settled. On the other hand, the same force can be read as the kind of destruction that must sometimes come before creation, a purging that, when rightly harnessed, clears space for new beginnings. The question for anyone hearing this is simple and hard. When anger comes, will it master you and spread chaos, or will you master it and let it do only the cutting that heals? Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion walketh about. Peter 5:8 is the final caution. Guard the heart, or the roar will set the course. Belphegor is often labeled the demon of sloth, yet in this telling his influence stretches far beyond simple laziness. Sloth under Belphegor's hand becomes a deep spiritual stagnation, a state in which the soul settles into stillness and refuses to grow or change. It is not merely avoiding tasks or dodging duty. It is a deeper refusal to face life's challenges, to press forward in spiritual or personal development, to take the next step when the way is hard. Belphegor embodies the danger of complacency, where the comfort of doing nothing hardens into a quiet prison, and the ease of inaction turns into a trap that blocks any real progress. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? Proverbs 6:9 speaks straight to that drift. Have you ever felt a day slide by, then a week, then a season, and noticed how heavy it becomes to move again? Picture yourself at the threshold of a necessary change. The path asks for effort, but the chair is warm. Which do you choose when no one is watching? At the same time, this account keeps a more nuanced side in view. Sloth can mark a waiting that is not decayed, but deliberate, a kind of hibernation, in which transformation is quietly forming beneath the surface. Such stillness is not evil on its face. Some esoteric streams treat it as a needed phase in the cycle of growth, a winter that shelters the roots before spring. To everything there is a season. Ecclesiastes 3:1, and they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Isaiah 40:31. Do those lines not suggest that rest can be righteous when it restores rather than rots? Imagine ideas incubating groundwork being laid in silence, the soul gathering strength to act at the right hour. The challenge and Belphegor's snare is to discern the line between healthy, regenerative rest and the kind of sloth that slides into spiritual decay. If you were holding a quiet evening in your hands, would you use it to heal and prepare, or would you let it numb you until your will goes dull? The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing. Proverbs 13:4 is a blunt warning. The same stillness that can renew a person when bent by Belphegor can also hollow them out. Beelzebub, often called the Lord of the Flies, is closely tied to gluttony. Yet in this telling, the sin reaches far beyond overeating or table excess. His gluttony names a deeper hunger, the relentless chase for life's pleasures until the chase itself consumes the chaser. Whose God is their belly? Philippians 3:19 sketches the posture desire enthroned the person serving what was meant to serve them. Under Beelzebub's sign, the grasp widens from food to more taste, more wealth, more thrills, promising fullness and delivering a hollowness that grows louder with every indulgence. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver. Ecclesiastes 5:10. Imagine you could have the next course, the next purchase, the next trip with a word. Would the ache finally quiet, or would it return before the plate is cleared? Why? Vajang, so makonla, dao hiekwa, nhung, the lukto, so chua juok, chingu ben trong, tamli, kon goi, han hak nhongoi jok, besuk man tuyet joy kwaham, mon vajam me, vaben hu ko hiu, vakingun hung the luk jo keo chung bien kwak joy than sutu hui hoi. Leviathan modsin vat bien hong, luk suat hien trong, nhung kau chuyen konoi bat, nat trong kintan. Hebrew numatsuk man tu vuksau mot kon tu tulonjen. Noi kachin ha to noi rang no kwai. Jong jai duong ba lam mo bau troi. Goi ko de dong loi kau je kau. Leviathan kong. Giop fardi yun on hoi mot kau va mot kau kach gi chuve bian. Kabaula noi, tau tuyen kwalai jola Leviathan. Tithien, snokadat. 26. Tuong chuok mot ala mot kon ran. Kwan kwai hoat mot kon rong hiu jau hin, an hanaita pop. Tan mot hin, an noikin huang kwa, vung nuok kongbi. Kiem soat, vasuk hut. Kwa. Kas. The look and giao. Ben duoi. Be mat, trong makwihok. Kwakito, giao kung mot kai. Tengan lien voi sujoki kong fain hu, mot toy hu. That sao trong truyen, tran mala, mot dong che ab jau ko. The dang trao ben trong tam ho. Kenti la sumuk nat kuak suong kot. Cham gon shorten ju trist van hung dungo. Nai fu hop voi hinan kwa mot. Tu gi jo huat jong. Trong bi mat chu jen. Ki kao trus sup jo. Ban jan bao gi o kam thai. Suso san len loi vao jan. Gia tri kwa min so voing guai kak. Van han thai nuak bien han chong. Tronen du doi. Nhu. The nau shua. Moilien higiwa. Leviathan va. Bien ka koin kia. Trong truong hop jo long. Jokin welen hu. Mot kon bao. Ko. Luong va tan fa. Kino bung no va kino di chuyen noko. Dalam lumo sufan joan hu. May jen chihuat. Ngai. Tui. Yen truyen. Kuswalai mangjen mot. Chieo sao kai shobio. Tuong nai. Trong kach bai. Jok bi truyen long. Joki hong chi. La mot loi lam. Ma kon la hin tuk tosukwachin. Noi kao kat. Mot noi kao kat. Nong jio kao kahon. To God's jojo. Leviathan cho. The tuong trung cho. Kun joi kat tuyet. Vongkwa tam hon huang jensu. Sio viet mot subon shon huang jen hung ngoi. Ganjat jen suvien man. Vemat tamlin va kao kat vot. Kwa huang chach. Fuok chon hung I joy kat su kong shin. Matiopat. Shest kirakach. Jikon joy. Koda juok. Chuyen. Huamot. Kach. Jung. Jan. New ban kam thai noi. Jiao jo toi nei ban sejinoshai. Santan kai. Jang hai. Ban sebien. Nothan. Loi the leolan. Ban van. Han man rangtash. Tuknamo viek. Jukien sukman bien long. Jukitu mot dong. Shedu doi ta. Mot kat kao ko. Kilua tok. Jesufat trien chukong. Paisu huidiat. Bimet lich su kaiten nai kung jong. Han voi su hon loan va voin hung. Dong nuok jiao tien trong. Niu huyen toai. Trong dong song kanan. Leviathan giong voi lotan. Ngoi bi baal hadad. Jan bai. Mod vo kitchen ho. Betrat tu shengu kuok. Noi loan qua bianca, mod hop am tuong tu, vang len trong mod bai tan, kavajang tan bigi. Jau Leviathan ti tien, 74 cordin. Va trong mod loi tien tri, noi vingai. Chua se trong fat Leviathan con ranjok. Vangai se giet chet con rong duoi bien. Isai 27, 1. Ban kong ki thai su tuong jong kong nu long joki kong jok. Kim suat su hon loan se theo sau noi nao ko su joki va tranchap. Noi joko su hon loan va moi geo gianat. Giako 3:16. Na hong no jok. Joy mat va sap sep. Mot su bin ting noi tam. Ko da thai da su hon loan. Nin chung Leviathan. Labiu tuong man. Me kwa su jo. Kisu bat. Man. Baso san sausak. Ko da boom. Fat vo hin. Lam sao tron tre. Tim va mot ki jok. Giai fong se fa. Huin hiu. Hon hungi chung da mong joy. Jong thoi hin an. Nai kung chi. Rakat kau kua tam. Hon ve mot jiu. Ki jo kau. Ka hon mot mong muon vot. Len tren. Hung jiu. Tam tuong. Bacham jen. Mot trang thai. Kau hon. Hai mat jokin Leviathan trotan mot bio tuong fuktap mot loan hakno visu hon loan me joki koda meng leva mot goi visu chuen joy. Kodik se ra ki kung mot nang luong juak chuen huang jen su fat trien kan han va ting tan. Kui satan ke tu, koi kung trong tu tuong kito gyao. Tuong juak te hien hu, hin dang tuk, su kwa kontin, no kong fai. At tuang kwa, malamot kontin, no tan han hui diet, sam chimnen tang kwa, jao juktra tuwa, hoa bin. Nhong hin han kwen tuak, sung tan hin man me kwon mat kang kong vi, giandun hong hin han de hien, ichi kwiet tam fa hui moi thu. Trong kao chuen nai kon gian kong fa ngaun hien. No juok len ke hoach kien han van ham jen viet fa, won hong gigan, ket kon, ang goi voin hao. Ketrom chi jen, je kwop, giet, va hui diet. Giang den dent, kao noi, gangon jofu, hop voi logik, kwa kon tin, no juok tin toan, hey, nengi sem kon tin, non hu, ve hot jong hu, den outrin de gioi, no sham ngoi chien tran koi, jong bao luk, chiarik ats kufo, va kwak gieva jile mot vet so hai. Ben jao no ami sao jo, tronen chasen tan, han tu roi bong no, voisuk men juje fa, hui bat kutugi no, chamjen, kon tin no kwa, kon ngoi kong tuk hien, su kong chin kwa, juk chua troi, giako, 120. Nuban kam thai hoi nong dang, len trong long, gut toi ne va aijo, titam hoi, chu no chuban simo kwa, he jong kwa, truok, kino tai tau, ban hiu, hin an min hoa, han man jiu, jo, kwa. Satan kon gian da jang so vino dai dang, no lai mo chiendich, chu kong fai mot kombuk fat, mot ku tuks dai huang jen su hui diet. Hoi nong gian va jung fam toi, jung chumakui, han dip, efeso chattered vani shext vani sedam, ojai jon, hu mot loi, kan bao ko mot kon, kach mong man ma kong jan van ko, the juak kiem soat truak kinotro, tan mot kan kong, mot sodong, giao li bi truyen, ko kwan giem fuktap, hon van noi rang sukman, nai ko the hoa jong hu, mot ngon lua kan tiet don sa